Hello and welcome to another in the series of the Dowsing Detectives. So this episode is the archaeological research of some standing stones that were standing and are now recumbent. Not that they're on view. The reason that we're doing this work, and this is with the Dowsing Detective, who's also a remote viewer, this is Peter Vincent, is because he noticed that from remote viewing, just in his office, he worked out that there were 18 standing stones. So when I arrived on the last day of October 2022 to go and do a field trip with him, Calverley Park, Calverley Grounds in Tunbridge Wells, UK, England, interesting because it was essentially a blind test, i.e. remote viewed what he thought was there. Now, on a previous trip, we had seen this stone which is poking out of an area in the grounds that drew our attention. Peter felt that it was quite unusual location for this kind of stone, and that set him to thinking, because he's found so much linking with extraterrestrials in this locale and immediate surrounding area, he wondered if there was a connection there. And often, like with Egypt and other sacred places, there's a huge and obvious interaction with ETs, whether conventional science and archaeology accepts that or not. It's quite clear that there is, and that's my stance on it. So I joined Peter, and we just thought we'd have a look to see if his desk side remote viewing actually panned out in the field. The number 42 that you will hear repeated many times in all of the Dowsing Detective work and episodes, it's like an access code, and it happens to add up to 42. And we know about the Douglas Adams, The Meaning of Life and all that, and it's 42 apparently. Well, it seems that in some ancient antediluvian past, 42 as representing some extraterrestrials from not our part of the universe were interacting with us. This was maybe before the Georgian time, so before 1700s in the UK. So I imagine that probably this kind of activity was happening in other places. So see what you think, and I hope you enjoy it.
We walk here, I'm on nothing, then I'm crossing something, then I'm going out, then I'm opening up. So we've got a stone here because it's sticking out there. It's laying flat across here. So we must know roughly what the depth of it is here.
So what we're trying to do is to delineate the stone,
So
which we think
it's
is
about
recumbent.
That long, that wide, a couple of feet thick. So there we are. It's crossing there, come out here, open up there. So what I'll do, I'll stick one of these at the back to show that that's the tail end of the stone roughly.
We're just trying to get an outline at the moment.
Basically, we're here, we're opened up, then we close again. So we know that here starts another stone. Nothing showing out there.
And the idea is that this was maybe some kind of ceremonial area with these long stones that were perhaps pushed into the recumbent position by the Romans.
They'd all be about the same size. The ground resistivity tests were done showing that there is solid matter here. Okay, I'll just do a test this way round. Right, there we are. And then over and then out. Basically that's where that one will end. Interesting about this one is that this one has a ley line through it, because every other one, according to my on remote viewing, has a ley line, and the ley line can be detected on this code here, which is 543110. 543110. We'll go to see whether we have a ley line here, because the ley line will also help us to identify other stones. So I hold the ley line code in my hand and I come under here and bingo, it crosses. But the thing is that that's where the ley line ends, but there's no ley line in this stone. So every other stone had a ley line through it.
Very
well,
unusual.
as far as we know, we have 18 stones here.
So this is what Peter has found from remote viewing from his desk.
If this was brand new, as put up by the ancients, like Easter Island, you would have 18 stones sticking up like that in a row, and then only 9 of them would have a ley line, but the whole area is surrounded by a ley line. They are geared to the names of the Egyptian gods. So we've got Atum, Tefnut, Nut, Shu, Geb, Nephilis and Isis, Set and Osiris. Osiris down there and Atum up there. The 9 gods of Egypt were represented by this stone line here, which means that whoever built this is all about the gods of Egypt in Tunbridge Wells, Kent, and it's been well and truly hidden by maybe the Romans who pushed them down, and then when they turned this into a park they just bulldozed the earth over. But knowing that we had a stone circle up that end of the park with ancient remains there, and our research in the Grove points to this. This was all hay meadow at one time, you see, with the River Grom running down, which is now piped under the ground. With the burials that we found up here, up that way, and therefore was pointing to where these people may have come from, or a good many of them may have come from. So we're now looking at maybe the origins of modern humanity and the teachers which were known to have been in Egypt as well. And they were here as well. So there were bases all over the earth, basically, of which this was one of them. So you ask yourself, well, why is it being kept so secret? Let's do a little bit more thing to get this pattern out. 4 stones so far we've done in a row, with one showing sticking out, which was how we found this by accident. And out of the 18 stones that would have been standing up in a row, about each take to measure them out actually, but I would say about 9 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot long, and about 2 to 3 foot wide and around about 2 foot thick. 18 standing stones, 9 of them have ley lines going through, and the ley line also runs along the boundary and up each of the boundary edges. So when these were standing up, the ley lines were going into the heavens. So these would have been acting as a marker, like landing lights at Gatwick Airport, basically.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, because our aircraft need to have their landing lights to see, whereas ancient aliens didn't. They needed just to sensorily pick up something. So these ley lines, 9 ley lines standing up, would have been a landline. That's why we were picking up an ancient craft buried deep below this bowling green.
The old bowling
It was
green.
about 100-foot diameter underground silo, down about 60.
Calverley Grounds, and what used to be the bowling green. Peter's got an artifact that he believes might be a reproduction of an alien vehicle, and we're looking at the remnances here, and we picked up some years ago a craft, a very long craft here, and so we're just seeing if there are similar relationships to the same item here. Yes,
About 56 feet at the bottom and about 90 feet long, delta wind.
I've just had a go at holding this, which was quite difficult to do because it's a fairly large piece, and the rod's crossed.
Yeah.
Beyond there is where the alien burials were. Yeah, strange graves, yeah.
Originally it was a derelict bowling green. I remember when it was being used as a bowling green. People know that there was something under that bowling green because there's a doorway under there, and somebody said when you go in it's about a 10-foot square. People had the idea that one of the sides was bricked up so you could walk in, and there was a great chasm under here which you could walk round the ledge of, so it was probably used as a water tank. But what is further down in the silts, don't forget we're dealing with thousands of years. I mean, if you look at leaf litter and archaeological sites, earth builds up over thousands of years. So if you've got something 20,000 years ago or even 30,000 years ago in a silo, then it would have silted up at the craft there. It would be under the soil anyway, but it's still giving up the same signal. So found that there were brick pillars under there to support what appears to be a cast iron domed roof over it. When cast iron was known to be manufactured, people then must have known about that. Whether that was the creation of a tank for storing water in, I don't know. But the biolocation team felt that it was later changed into a fish breeding tank. So fish, they needed to have decent fish to feed on, because Catholicism, it would have been from the Roman times onwards, fish, you know. The manor house was up there, so fish were bred. But the thing is that they adapted something, and we have another silo down the other end there, again with what appears to be craft bits below of the same delta wing type. That's about the same size and depth, so we think there are many more around the town as well. Mind you, this was a major underground city site that spreads over a very wide area itself, but more importantly may well have particularized itself from an underground chamber into wherever it needed to be. The test that I was given, I was just given this map. Contact in France, he said, "There's a map, can you find out what you can find on it?" So I went over and I found 10 silos. There was no tunnels coming out of them at all. They were these silos, and in them there was nothing. So I recorded all of this, and then he said, well, that's very strange. I found there was nuclear war and warfare had taken place in the area, the nuclear stains, etc. Again, we found on the craft down there, it's got nuclear power drives on it, although one of them is missing. That's why it never took off. It was probably in the repair shop, because there's tunnels all the way around here linking things here. So the ley lines basically were drawing attention to communications and sensory systems. This one, no ley line. This one, force makes them cross, ley line. Next one, no ley line, opens up, ley line. So every other one is a ley line. So out of the 18 stones that we've picked up and shown you on that map, 9 of them have got ley lines going through. That represents basically the 9 gods of Egypt.
What brings you to that conclusion?
I learned about from the Blaze TV channel of Ancient Aliens about the 9 gods of Egypt. And that number reflects to other related things. So
Okay, so shall we see if we
some
mark
more.
out
Yeah, okay.
any more, and also do a bit more of an in-depth marking out of the edges?
yeah, right. So what I'm doing here is I'm using Geoffrey Crockford's system of taking a stain sample off the stone that's down there. So what I'm holding is equivalent to what I should be picking up. Magnetically, because there are many different varieties of sarsen stone. It's basically a sandstone with the different minerals within them. But as I understand it, the sarsen stone was revered by the ancients.
So we're looking for another stone,
Yeah, right,
the
yeah.
other side of our original
Now
one.
we're off the thing now, and here we're hitting another, right?
Oh, okay.
So down here, we're there. We come off here, just about down here, right? And what is interesting is they're about the same size. So this one here, being next to the other one, should have a ley line in it. It didn't. So it's got a ley line. It responds to a ley line. See, so that one basically, there's nothing there. Got a ley line here. So there's another stone here. There is a row of them here. There's no doubt about it. Of more solid than anything else. And basically, this is not a stone that you find in this park.
But do you remember when we were speaking to Nigel
Yeah,
Stapple?
yeah.
He thought that it wasn't sarsen, that it was actually but sandstone.
The thing is that when we look at the pictures that were taken in 1948, it showed standing stones up there.
Oh yeah,
And the map of this area showed the stone circle up there as an archaeology round, fenced in with pine trees all the way round, with a river Grom running below it, which is now, as I said, piped under the ground. In 1867 they did a 1 in 500 scale ordnance survey map, and on those survey maps it showed a stone sundial, every garden gate, every ice house entrance, anything that was above the ground, every single tree was recorded. It was so highly detailed that it was a massive map. What is interesting, that the known area of the stone circle did not show any standing stones or archaeology there, or did it show the circle of trees. Yet in 1910, when they did another ordnance survey on microfiche that I saw in our planning office with grid references, and then in 1948 aerial photographs were taken, showed standing stones and that circle of trees. So I asked Ordnance Survey if they could investigate why this was so, as it was such an exacting map of the area, why it didn't show things that were on there. And the answer was, well, it would have been put on there, but if somebody such as Historic England asked us to take it off, we would have removed it. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why would you have removed it? There must be something more than just a stone circle there. There must have been something under the stone circle, which then raises very interesting questions as to the mad drive to build an enormous underground car park there.
Yes, which didn't come to pass,
it
thank goodness.
No, it didn't come to then, but there's still plans to build some sort of a residential block there or office there to sell off the car park, which may allow access to what might be under that mound in another way rather than digging the park out. But had they gone ahead with that car park, it would have gone on a spiral down, and somebody said it would have been the most expensive car park in England for the cost of doing it, the amount of cars that would have parked in it. You wonder about this. Removed off the map, a very highly detailed map, then in 1973 broken up. I've been a resident in this town since 1969. The area of what was a stone circle on top of that mound up there being smashed up by the park keepers under the instructions of the council. Mr. Ashby then, who was the head park keeper, basically broke up a lot of sandstone stones and put them into this sort of layout here. The thing is, on the top of the mound up there was a different type of sarsen stone, which was very whitish in colour, very heavy and extremely difficult to break up. Now in '69 when I arrived, they were stones recumbent with a dolmen stone in the middle when this lot was smashed up and cleared to what we see today is just a grass mound. And then in 1979 apparently the act was changed, which would have made that illegal to do. So it was questionable. To remove the evidence
Was ordered to break up remaining standing stones.
And actually, I had no interest to say in archaeology then or anything, and I actually walked through the park and I saw them doing this, and I actually spoke to an official there who was the museum curator and also the park's attendant then, and they said, oh, we've been instructed to clear the area to facilitate grass cutting. And I thought, well, it's a good job there's no lawns around Stonehenge then, is there? Maybe the city council would have said, we've got to cut this, we don't want to go round these stones, we better knock them away. But local press reports at the time said that some people were complaining about the cooking of pigeons on one of the stones there, strange events happening at night, and I think they thought if we didn't have this here it might not attract these sort of strange goings on. But what is interesting, later on when we realised there had been archaeology there, because we had a witness statement, I'd seen it, I lived in the road there and I used to sit in amongst it with the kids playing in it. When we were speaking to the council officials on the mound over there, well, one person employed by the council was there, an official from another organisation plus an archaeologist was there. We drew up the craft that was around under there above the ground, and somebody says, oh, the door's around here in mid-air, because basically your mind is sensing the whole thing above the ground rather than going over it below the ground, so you can go underneath it and above it.
Interesting too is that Jeff, as I was looking around his garden and he was showing me which planet was Earth, we went to the outer edges of our solar system as he'd got displayed on his garden, and he said, and look at this, and he was following incoming craft.
It took 15 minutes for a craft to come through Saturn down to Earth. Just 15 minutes, and here we are taking umpteen months just to get something to send to Mars, and at least 3 days to get something to the moon. You know, so what technology are they using?
Great bit of technology, that couldn't be more simple.
No. So we'll do the maps to follow on to show examples.
Whilst we're having a nice cup of tea with the station master.
It says here, respect to be shown at all times.
No, oh yeah, okie dokie. Yes, sir. So we're talking about these maps which range over various years from the 1808 through to modern times. The reason that we're even looking at them is because Peter is noticing some anomalies to do with the drawing out of certain parts of, say, woods or a cemetery, where you would expect, say, architecture of stones, trees and plantings out. And these are maps with 1 in 500 with these particular
Those are 1 in 500 scale,
This is 1 in 500. Yeah. And the thing about this one is that we think, well, Peter was saying, well, where are the stones? Because these guys all look like plants, perhaps.
But we noticed that some of them are distinctly different. These here have got much more detail in and against these trees or bushes here, which are relative to their size. So
Yeah.
these marking stones, so I call them stones actually, which are spread around, which you'd expect to find in a cemetery, and along the boundaries as well. I think they're stones.
So the point of having this conversation at all is to really open the discussion about, is there something being hidden here that the map makers, map creators have gone to some lengths to do, i.e.
possibly instructed to do,
and that is hiding some of the ancient archaeology of the Tunbridge Wells area.
Here's a brilliant example. Here's the 1808 map that's published in the Civic Society of Maps of Tunbridge Wells. Here we have the fenced-in area with the tall pine trees and the River Grom running along here. The River Grom still runs, but it's piped under the park now. And this is on the mound behind the dental surgery. There it is on the 1808 map as published. It's not quite in scale, correctly, but it's as accurate as you're going to get for a map of that period. We then come to 1867 maps, which were 1 in 500 scale. And there is nothing in that area at all. But we do notice this, which I remember seeing in trees and bushes up the edge of Mount Pleasant Avenue, which used to run up here, and this D-shaped water pool here that was destroyed when Hooper's had their car park.
Hooper being the big
store, yeah, it's under where the car park would have been. I remember this being smashed up and taken away.
And what is that?
Well, it was a couple of Romantic-looking columns with a plinth on the top.
Okay.
And it really was representing Celtic archaeology, basically. So we had that, you see. And again, outside the area of this, but in the grounds of the then manor house, you had these big, what I am anticipating as stones, whereas you've got these trees of varying sizes. Dotted about, and you can actually make a design out of this which falls into a sort of a star system. And then we'll come to this here, which is about just before 1973, but done in the 1930s when the bandstand was officially opened, and the photographer took a picture over the new bandstand and caught the stone circle, which is depicted here on the mound here with trees around. They were recumbent, and they were removed in 1973 under instruction, and that's Mr. Ashby's statement about what he did to get clear of this all away. And this was a giant stone which had a hole under it, and my daughter used to play under it. Mr. Ashby called it the Holy Stone, and they couldn't break it up, so in the end they had to get a JCB in to take it away, and there were other stones standing up all the way around this. But because it was out of the way in a corner, nobody ever saw it. Nobody had the means to go up there unless they were interested. We would like to know of anybody else who has photographs or postcards, any age up to 1973. People must have gone in there and photographed these things. And also,
in the
maybe
mound,
in the
Calverley.
trees, this two vertical stones with a plinth on the top that were highly carved, and ivy was growing over it. So the thing is, okay, you can't bring them back. Somebody found this photograph going back to about 1948, series of aerial photographs of the area, and they've actually picked up the standing stones here, which I remember. And that's the Calverley Hotel, which was the old manor house originally. And this was all hay meadow before it was turned into a park. And you can see people sort of sitting around and doing things here. So there's your circle of trees, and there's your standing stones. 1948, 1808. So you have to ask yourself, why then, on a 1 in 500 scale map, when sundials were recorded, stairs and steps and posts and post boxes and water tanks, did they not record the stones and the tree circles in that area? I wrote to Ordnance Survey about this, and they investigated, and they said they would have put them in because it was such a highly detailed map. However, if they were instructed to remove them, they would have done so, and suggested a government department as instructing them to remove it, such as Historic England. The excuse at the time, well, it facilitated grass cutting. Well, all I can say is thank God Stonehenge wasn't in a public park, because they would have had those down before now so the lawnmowers could go straight through it. You know, I mean, God.
So tell us about this map,
Well,
Peter.
this map covers the area that my residence is over. It also shows the old road going up Grove Hill Road. And here the pub, which was then called the Kentish Yeoman, is now the Calverley Arms across the road. And this is where Hooper's car park would be.
That's
here.
the department
Yeah.
store.
Again, you can see a whole row of these stone, what I call stone-like structures against these that are all bushes and trees, and even a mound of trees here. When I added these up, there were 42 of them. And I thought, oh, come on, this is giving the game away. I said, because my house is over a burial ground for which it's a checkerboard pattern, 142 against one male human. And here we've got this, 42 of these stones in a row. So Mountfield House is up here, where we've got the Orion symbol laid out in their lawn with another, which would be the planet, I suppose, relating to the star sign. And you've got the bushes and trees all along here. I mean, they put the tank in here. Every minor detail was put on here. So if you had a stone monument or a fountain, it was put in there. So when they turn around and say, well, these are difference between forestry trees and bushes trees and things, I don't believe it. So this must have been a cemetery at one time along the road here relating to 42 and humans marked with stones, and somebody's put all the stones in a row down here.
And 42 being our ET.
Yeah, E.T.
Relatives.
Yeah, quite. This is what it's all about. Douglas Adams,
Yeah.
the mystery of life and everything in it. It's 42. Why wasn't that, which was there in 48, which was there in 1808, not put in 1867 in an even bigger scale?
Well, my dear, that's for the Dowsing Detective to find out. And thank you very much at the end of October.
Can I just show you this that showed
See,
up?
once you start the Dowsing Detective off, you can never stop him.
No, one of these maps I showed up was an area of land up the top of Grove Hill Road in Camden Park. And this is still the 1867 maps. And I noticed this star formation here and two here. So I then went on Google Earth, found that we got 1, 2, 3 left there. This one seems to have disappeared. One here, which would have been that one there. So this one here shows as an earth mound where something was and is no longer. So whether it be a tree or whether it be a stone, it's still left an earth circular mound of where something was. And the other two items are still there in relation. And then I found, strangely enough, in Calverley Park, the same design. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 here. So here we've got here, Camden Park area, 1, 2, 3, 4, the one missing, and 2 there.
Have you got any conclusions about
Yes,
what
I
this
did,
is?
because I then used the same communication systems as I do with the 42 code. And I say, is this a star system? And I got a yes. So I was given a name for it, and I painted up a star code card, which would allow me to go over the Daily Telegraph star chart, which everybody used up until modern satellites went up. I could not find any response to it at all. However, I thought, I wonder, because these things are travelling through a time wormhole from their own section of the universe that we've never recorded. Now we do, because we can see it. Hubble was allowing us to see these things. I then found a response in their section of the universe. So it's one of their star signs, their star systems, that's depicted here twice. In their section of the universe, depicted here in 2 positions on the 1867 maps in Tunbridge Wells, and disguised as trees when in actual fact they're stones. Or they took the stones out and planted trees, because I've heard that story as well. And all happened in the Georgian times, you see. Yeah, we've got this very detailed one here, which is where the present bowling green is off Grove Hill Road. We've got a lovely star sign here, linked up with these designed so-called trees, which aren't, because you can't make a star sign out of any of these, but you can out of these. So I do believe that they represent star systems. So there was an enormous amount of study going on in this town at some time in the Georgian period, maybe from the early Stuart period, because of what they found here, which is probably equivalent to Roswell in America, and this is our Roswell here.
Well, I think this actually is a very good point to just say that anybody wanting to see a quite in-depth look at the Grove, there's episodes 1 and 2, the Dowsing Detectives, and I strongly recommend everybody have a look, because we have gone into quite a bit of that information, and I think that's us for a Sunday afternoon.
Quite.
Lovely.
Yeah, so we'll see what that stirs up, because I tell you what, this 42 keeps showing off something to get the things.